Welcome, alumni and friends. Today's event is scheduled from noon to 1 p.m. and will begin with a brief introduction from the dean and be followed by a Q&A style town hall. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions ahead of time. We'll end with questions from the chat depending on timing, but we may not be able to get to them all. We're currently live streaming from the UConn School of Business Graduate Business Learning Center in Hartford, and here with us today is Dean of the School of Business, John Elliott. I'd like to introduce our co-hosts for this afternoon. Ish Panwar is currently a senior honors undergrad student who is majoring in finance. She's heavily involved in the business school through Hillside Ventures and UConn Consulting Group. Alongside Ish, we have business alum Sherry Cantor. Sherry graduated magna cum laude with a degree in accounting and is currently the mayor of her hometown, West Hartford. We're going to jump right in. Dean Elliott.
It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to have a few of you who have an interest in the School of Business and UConn sharing an hour with us. I'm delighted to be here with two extraordinary examples of future alumni and existing and strong alumni, because we really do live in relationship with each other and value incredibly the relationship we have with all of our alumni, because continuously they provide us information that will blend into a few of the questions that you've provided to us. I want to add two additional things. One is that Ish is literally a few days away from graduation. She's finishing after 3.5 years at UConn and graduating this month. And Sherry is not only the mayor of West Hartford, but also a member of the advisory cabinet for the dean and the School of Business. So I work with her in that capacity, and also a member of the Board of Trustees of the university. And so there's an example of the depth of commitment and relationship that many of our alumni have. And I thank you, Sherry, and I thank you, Ish, and be careful because these things may lie on your future, and we look forward to seeing that happen. But with that, let me turn to the questions at hand. And Ish, I think you're going to ask the first question and walk us through some things.
Sure, yeah, and thank you so much, Dean Elliott, for the kind words. I am excited about the opportunity to be a part of this conversation with you and to share all the exciting things that are happening with UConn, with the alumni. As you mentioned, I'm graduating in just a few days now, and as an alumni, I am looking forward to supporting our programs, and not just the undergraduate programs, our MBA and graduate programs as well. I actually recently saw that Fortune ranked our executive MBA in the top 20. Would you be able to share a little bit more with us about that?
Rankings are always interesting, and they come from everywhere. And in this case, it was Fortune, a well-known publication. But one of the realities about these rankings is that different entities create them in different ways on a regular basis. And it's always a little hard to know what causes things to happen. This is the first time we've been publicly ranked by Fortune for the EMBA. And it's not because our EMBA changed drastically. It's because they changed the rule. And the rule had always been you have to have this many students in your MBA to be ranked. And we never had that many. We have a fairly small program, under 30. They changed the rule. So we had a very high quality program, and when they changed the rule, we made it into a measurable, reportable level, and I'm delighted by that. But it's just a reminder that you have to be careful with rankings, because there are a lot of details in the background about how you got there and why you're ranked. And one of the things that we rely on is that we have an increasing number of ranked activities, because more and more people are getting into the ranking business. So now you can find rankings for the Master of Science in Accountancy. We're top 20. You can find rankings for the Master of Science in Business Analytics. We're top 20. You can find those kinds of things today. And it wasn't so long ago that they didn't rank those things. So it's just an interesting game. So thank you.
And when it works, you take it.
That's right. That's right. We're very pleased to be in the top 20.
We do that all over. That's right. So, Ish, it is such a pleasure to meet you. I met you virtually, but now in person. Congratulations on your incredible success at UConn. And I do hope you will be an engaged alumni and continue to connect with the school in a variety of ways. And there are so many ways to do that. And Dean Elliott, it is always such a pleasure to be with you and talk to you. And, you know, the world is changing so fast. And employers are also, having to redefine the way they relate to their workforce and how we prepare our workforce. And there's so many things that we talk about. And one of the things that I think people think about are what are new programs or initiatives that we look forward to seeing at the School of Business to keep us in the top ranked.
Well, one of the things that we do consistently is engage with alumni. And so we have groups of alumni advising us across the board. So there's an advisory group in accounting, there's an advisory group in real estate, there's an advisory group in finance. And in every case, and there's of course your relationship with me and the cabinet, and in every case we look for people to help us think about that very question. What does corporate America need in order to meet their professional needs and obligations? And if you just look at what we've done recently, at the moment, in the past year, we've created a new online MBA program. Didn't have that before, couldn't have it before, in part because we are an organization that lives by faculty governance, and many of our faculty didn't believe online learning was a good thing.
Right.
Then COVID happened. Everyone had to do it. And having done it, they thought, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. They didn't love it necessarily, but it wasn't as bad as they thought. And what we realized was that the students wanted and needed it as an option. So we created it. Similarly, we want to be at the cutting edge of knowledge. Our online MS in business analytics was exactly that 10 years ago. And we are now launching the MS in fintech, which is very timely. It's in the moment, right at the cutting edge of finance and what we do with technology. And just around the corner, there's insurtech and health tech and other things which are a blending of these activities. And in both of those cases, I think we've got new programs that we're excited about, and they all start gradually because people don't know we're doing it yet.
That's right.
But they'll find out and they're buying in. And so it's an exciting time. And we're not done. We're not finished. There are more things coming. And I'll leave that for later in the conversation.
That's exciting. Maybe I'm choosing the wrong time to graduate. It looks like it's a great time to be a student at UConn, and maybe you'll have to hold me back a few years and keep me a part of the program. I know this is something you and I have talked about previously, but it's really, given that the school is growing so much and there's so many great programs coming to UConn, I continue to be surprised by the great classes of students we enter into the school each year. And particularly the undergraduate students in the class of 2023, their qualities and their ambition continue to amaze me. And I'd love to hear sort of your takeaways and what you've noticed about the class of 2023.
Well, it's a very interesting time. And I guess there are three things I would say. One is that you're an interesting example of someone who came to UConn from New Jersey.
Yeah.
And so increasingly we're finding that the quality of what we do is attracting students from outside the state. And that's a wonderful thing. We want the diversity, we want that richness of experience. The second thing I would say is that this year is a difficult year because the incoming class, and we often talk about the class of 23 as being the class that's about to graduate, but you can also think about them as the group that just arrived, right? And the class that's about to graduate exemplifies everything that is best about UConn: grit, commitment, enthusiasm. They made it through 2 years of COVID.
Yes.
It wasn't pretty, but they made it through 2 years of COVID, and they're graduating into a world that is still trying to find its way at the back end of COVID, but they've made it happen. And on the front end of the people coming into our school today, they just lived through 2 years of COVID in high school. And that wasn't pretty either. And, what we find is that we've got a delicate recalibration of how we do our work. Face-to-face is just no longer quite as normal and fully accepted as it was. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be an important issue. And for young people, it remains true that their phone is their best friend, and they do a lot with that device. And yet, as you well know, Ish, the reality of your growth as a young professional and your opening of doors with your future often requires face-to-face involvement and contact and engagement.
Yes.
And one of our goals is to help these young students find their way to that path, because it's got to be both. Mm-hmm. You've got to be really accomplished as a professional who can do spreadsheets and present value and all of the things that we teach. But you also have to be really effective as a communicator. And that's another part of what we do. And we need to put opportunities in front of young people to take advantage of those learnings. You've done it. Others are doing it. It's a critical part of what we do. And the good news is, I think that increasingly our classes realize that. They take responsibility upon themselves to both learn the ABCs and learn the communication, leadership, and skills.
Absolutely.
We'll see. That's my thinking.
Well, there's no question that both the incoming class and the outgoing class, and actually students at every age group, and not only students, all of us adults, were impacted by COVID in so many ways, and resiliency is I think the best that we can take out of, and the fact that we all have to pivot and do things in a way. And I remember that planning at the spring break so well, to bringing our students around online so they didn't lose that mm-hmm. learning, and then embracing them when they went on campus. And one of the things that I was always so impressed with was the respect for each other and protecting each other, and mm-hmm. doing that, whether it was wearing a mask or whatever those behaviors were, to help the students, in there and, in their, at their home, their environment at UConn. And that was really inspirational to me. But as an alumni, I often think, what can I do that can better help? And also following up on your comments on how important it is to have that personal interaction, and not only professionally, but socially too. And I think everybody suffered from that. And how do we kind of make up? So as an alumni, there are so many ways that we can help. And I feel like I've seized on some of those opportunities. But what, from your standpoint, are things that alumni can do that can really help these wonderful students just expand their wings and succeed?
So the wonderful news is that our alumni want to help. They're willing to help, and we just have to give good guidance, mm-hmm. right? So at the end of the day, one of the things I often say is, let people know you went to UConn. Mm-hmm. Don't hide this under a bushel basket. Mm-hmm. Let it be known that you had a great experience. And that's particularly valuable for our youngest alumni, who, as they go into the workforce, are able to say, as Ish can, I've been on internships where I was side by side with young people from the best and brightest history and background and universities, and we hold our own and more. Yeah. So the first thing is, you had a quality experience. Let people know that's true. The second thing, I guess, would be, you can give back so many different ways, and for different alumni at different phases, the way you can give back changes. We have so many of our alumni who mentor our students, and they love it, mm-hmm. and the students mm-hmm. love it, and it's a two-way street. I don't know who gets more out of it, actually, mm-hmm. but it's a two-way street, and it matters. We have alumni who serve on advisory groups who give us advice. All good. So I think the key is just be visible, be outspoken, and know a little bit about us so that you have a story to tell now and again.
Mhm. And if you're listening, you're learning about us. So that's
Exactly.
all great.
That's right.
And share.
Yes, absolutely. And I think with this involvement we've already had from alumni and with it increasing in the coming years, we're seeing a ton of innovation around campus. I mean, programs are increasing, students attending are increasing, student involvement is increasing. And recently, actually, with that has also come the nomination and the acceptance of Radinka Americas as the president of UConn. And I'm interested in hearing how, if at all, you see that impacting the School of Business.
So Rudenka is a remarkable woman. And to my eye, this was an excellent choice by the Board of Trustees to go with her as a person who was at UConn, has been at UConn, and in her period as interim president, proved herself, right?
Yes.
So I would say there are three things that people should know about Rudenka. She was born in Eastern Europe. She matured and developed in Eastern Europe. She decided that she wanted a PhD, and she went to Japan to get a PhD as a woman and stayed there and worked. This is not an easy path. This is not a timid woman. This is a person who has stepped forward and had goals and has accomplished them. So step one. Step two, she's been here 12 years. She's a university distinguished professor. She's an engineer of significant accomplishment and had proven herself not only as a professor, but also as the vice president for research, running all of the research enterprise for the university. So she'd proven herself. And I think the board made an excellent decision to name her as president. And one of the reasons that I say that is she is smart, courageous, and energetic, and fully committed to our students. This is a woman who knows that the students are why we're here. That's what the university is about. And as you watch her in her first 2 months, I guess, as actual president, she's already accomplished several things, and I give her huge credit for them. The first thing I would say is that the board was getting beaten up by our students over the environment, and the students were not happy with what the university had done. And I believe you were in the room when you heard 20 groups of students come and say,
there was definitely global warming in that room.
yes. And yet I think the students had a point, and the board thought the students had a point. But we went away from that day unclear as to the outcome. And a month later, Rudenka came back to the board and said, carbon neutral by 2030. She made a commitment on behalf of the university, and she's a scientist who is very knowledgeable about hydrogen as a fuel source. She's very knowledgeable about controlling pollution. She knows what she's talking about, and she could talk about what we were already doing. Our carbon footprint was declining over time. She could point to that, but she could also say, and we can get from here to here because of these three things, and that's what we're going to do. So courageous, forceful, engaged. The other thing that I've been impressed with by her, in her commitment to students, she's been very vocal about a number of initiatives that she really values. And three of them that ring very true for the School of Business are financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and emotional intelligence. And these are just important aspects of what we do. And of course, for us, entrepreneurship has been a big deal for a decade or more. And emotional intelligence has always been a part of what we care about, because it's really about the extra thing that our corporate friends tell us. We ask them the question, what are we doing well? What can our students do well? And they always say, They've got it. They know how to do present value. They know how to do balance sheets. They know how to do the accounting and finance and stuff we teach. But communication continues to be an issue. Leadership continues to be an issue. And those are the elements that emotional intelligence builds on. So Rodinka is leading that charge, and we are right behind her, committed to making something happen in that space. So I'm excited about having her as president.
Yeah, she truly is amazing, and I was on the search committee along with being on the trustees that ultimately voted for Rodinka. I've heard people refer to her as lightning in a bottle, like just, and there's nobody that is a bigger UConn cheerleader. She's been here 12 years, but it feels like she's been here forever because she just knows so much about the institution. She works tirelessly. She's so passionate. And the passion and what set her apart, I will say, with a really, really strong field, was the student commitment, as you mentioned, that students are first. There were a couple of people that, we interviewed, and they didn't mention students until the end of their interview process. She started with students, and but it was more her record of mentoring and talking about, the individual relationships that she had and changed so many lives. She did in many ways, but it was those individual students sometimes that got that extra push. And we're very lucky that she wanted this job, because it's a very challenging position, no question.
Yes, it is.
So we have a beautiful business school, right? It's different than where I went to my classes, and I'm a little jealous. But there's not really I know there is a naming opportunity that we're working on. Where does that stand?
In process.
Okay.
and actually, what I would say here is two things. One, you never know until it's done, whether it's going to get done. But the good news is there are a number of people who are actively engaged in the philanthropic commitment to the school and to the future. And so it's one thing to say, are we going to name the school? There are other things that get named and other places where financial investments make a huge difference. And there are a number of them that are in discussion. So I can't say much more than that today, but I'm happy to say that I hope there will be more to say soon.
I hope so. And it would be wonderful for all the trustees to really honor a person that shows that kind of commitment and philanthropic, philanthropic, generosity to UConn.
I agree completely.
Yeah. So
and happily, at the moment in the school, we are in good shape with our team. So fundraising is a team sport.
Yes.
And we currently have 3 professionals in the school. They're all very good. 2 are fairly recent hires. But as the funding and staffing of fundraising at the university go, we're as well positioned as any school. And I'm delighted by that. And I'm grateful for the help of the Board of Trustees and the foundation in making that come to pass. So
Great.
We'll see.
Great.
That's exciting to hear. It's really exciting to hear, Dean Elliott. And this next topic here, you and I have talked about a lot, and you've always been so supportive of me and my pursuits in finance, and especially a woman in finance. And I know you think a lot about the students and what we can do to sort of even the playing field a bit for some of our female finance students. And you're very well aware of the gender inequality that exists in finance particularly. So I'd love to kind of hear a little bit from your perspective and what the school is doing to support female finance students and to kind of improve the gender inequality there.
So this is a really difficult problem. And it's a difficult problem for a couple of different reasons. One is that we have, at the federal level and in a fairness perspective, a point of view that says you can't gender discriminate, which means both on the plus and the negative side, you can't distinguish people and just pick them out and take good care of them, right? On the other hand, we think it's so important that women have opportunity and safe places to engage, that we find ways to do it within those constraints, within the reality of federal law and fairness. And that's a delicate process. So as you know, we've got the Women in Business Club.
Yep.
We have different groups that come together in a sort of fair way to engage and support and develop women. We have alumni who want to make something happen and want to help open doors of opportunity for our women, and particularly to make sure in finance. And finance is the most difficult discipline for us in this space. In almost all of the other departments, gender balances are pretty equal in terms of students and their diversity. Finance is not so true. And part of it is the cultural norm of the trading floor, the cultural norm of investment banking, the way in which people are rewarded, the way in which people are challenged, the expectation of their work. And it's not gender friendly necessarily. So we have to worry about that. And it was interesting because we were talking earlier about Citi. And Citi is an example of a firm that has a very strong capital markets group. It's got an interest in investment banking. And in that particular subgroup, I think there are 2 women out of about 20.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just a nature of the beast at the moment. And we have to help create opportunities for women to have an open door to develop their skills and then to move in. But we also have to talk with the corporate community about this reality. Because if you don't notice it and you don't manage it and you don't react to it, you don't make progress. So I think it is a place where increasingly people are thinking about it as something that needs some attention and support. And, we'll see. But I'm optimistic, and I know we're doing our part, and we have a number of partners who are anxious to help us do our part. And some of them are donors who want to write a check to imagine, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but imagine in the student managed fund, we currently have 8 teams. And what if one of the teams was all women? Would that be a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
But these are examples of things we want to think about. So wish us luck.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to support that.
Good. We'll be calling.
I know accounting's a little different. The makeup, I think it was 25% when I was
Right.
went to school, and now I think it's maybe even 50-50 or even more women,
over.
right? Yeah.
There are more women in accounting today.
Right,
But
right.
I was in the business
paved
back
the
when you
way.
were in the business. And there was the day when, as a young professional in accounting, the firms, were reluctant to position women in bad neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And they didn't want them to have to carry large, heavy bags. I mean, we're way past that.
I know.
Way past
I know.
that.
Now we have wheels.
That's right.
Or also weightlifting. So can we ask that trivia question about the female graduates in 1992?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we don't have the answer, so I'm interested in getting the answer. In 1992, we had 110 female graduates. How many do you think we had in 2022? So we will close with the answer for that, I guess, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to ask about regional campuses. It's something that it comes before the trustees very frequently, and was one of the things we talked about in our interview process for a new president was the whole UConn, right? UConn Nation, all of UConn, one UConn. And we have a number of, we have 4 regional campuses, and each campus has their own identity and their own specialties and their own, their own dynamic opportunities and challenges. But tell me about for the business school, how do you, changes, or how do you look at that with the 4 regional campuses?
So you're absolutely right, Sherry. We have 4 campuses, and they are different. And I would say that as recently as 5 years ago, the university hadn't really quite settled on how we wanted to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
The business school has been very focused on Hartford and Stanford especially,
Mm-hmm.
but also Waterbury, because that's where our graduate students are in large part.
Mm-hmm.
And we've made investments. This space, the GBLC we call it,
Mm-hmm.
is 6 floors of an office building that we've converted into educational space.
Mm-hmm.
We rent it, the business school rents it, we rebuilt it,
Mm-hmm.
we created it as learning space. In Stanford, in a similar way, there was the early decision to actually build a dorm,
Mm-hmm.
and many people were concerned that this was
Yes.
not going to fill, and I was
over.
concerned that it wasn't big enough,
Right.
and happily I was right.
Yes,
So it
you
filled immediately, and we still haven't built as much as I think we should have for Stanford to thrive,
Mm-hmm.
but it's growing and growing nicely. And so in both of those places, we've got a real identity. In Stanford, you could say that it's a financial services hub for the state.
Mm-hmm.
In Hartford, you could say that it's a capital city. It's a city where insurance is king. It's got its own distinctive characteristics. And we built out the Times building as a campus
Right.
for it. So those two locations, Hartford and Stanford, I think are quite special and growing nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And we in the business school have added a number of tenure track faculty each year for the last several years in Stanford. And 10 years ago, there were hardly any tenure track faculty there because early on, it was really a community college-like
Right.
atmosphere where students started and then after 2 years left to come to Storrs.
Mm.
Those days are gone. And I think that Rodenka, as a leader, believes that the regional campuses have and should have a distinctive identity and is working to invest to make that true.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because if you look around the country, there are a lot of states that have multiple campuses and multiple ways of doing business. There's not one answer to this problem. But I think we're developing a good answer, a distinctive answer, and we've got choices to make in Avery Point.
Mm-hmm.
We've got choices to make in Waterbury. Waterbury is developing distinctively, particularly around healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about nursing and you think about the ag schools' emphasis on allied health, these are developing strong footprints in Waterbury.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm quite excited, actually.
Can a student do 4 years at and get a business degree at a regional camp, either Stanford or Hartford now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, right. So
in
that's
Hartford
the,
and Stanford,
and that
there
wasn't
are-
always the case.
that's right.
Right.
But no, today in Hartford and Stanford, there are many options,
Mhm.
and they're good options.
Mhm.
And yeah, so absolutely. And the number is growing. So speaking of new degree programs,
Yeah.
I talked about the Master of Science in FinTech.
Mhm.
We're also launching, this is new news, folks, listen up. We're also launching an undergraduate degree
Mhm.
in FinTech.
Mm.
And that will be available in Stanford.
Mhm.
And I think will be very popular in Stanford. And so it's an example.
And it's a national leader, I think, in
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
That's
That's
not
right.
happening around the
That's
country.
right. We're an early mover
Yes.
there,
Mhm.
as 10 years ago we were with business analytics.
Right.
So I think it's very timely, and I think it'll pay off, and we'll watch carefully. But
And
we'll
I
see.
also think it serves our regional campuses serve the non-traditional student, which is so important for the Connecticut economy to have somebody that might want to have a career change, has a family, might not, be able to go to stores and has that ability to work and go to school. So really important, I think, to help continue to move our state forward and develop the
And as a
workforce we need.
trustee, you well know
No.
that both Stanford and Hartford are distinctive Hispanic serving institutions.
Mhm.
These are diverse populations, specifically in the Hispanic space, but broadly diverse and important for that
Right,
very
they're
reason.
minority, majority
Yeah, exactly.
student population. So yeah, it's great. It makes us stronger.
Yeah, no, actually, I took a class recently with someone that was a non-traditional student, and it was interesting for me as an undergraduate to witness that perspective and what it's like to balance both a workload and a family and a job on the side. And I think that's an important perspective, and I'm excited to hear that that aspect of the school is growing. And with these changes coming, I'm interested to hear what you think, how these will pair with the struggles that we're facing in the business world. It's a very challenging environment, as I'm sure you're aware of, in the business world. And I'm interested to hear what you think, as a student, we should stay aware of, and how these changes and challenges might translate into some of the programs that we offer.
I would say for the young graduate, flexibility and willingness and readiness to encounter change and respond to change are the key things. Many advisors to young people entering the professions as you are now would say, periodically people will come to you and give you an opportunity, and just recognize those as opportunities. They're not punishment that you're being sent to a new place or asked to do a new job. They're opportunities to prove yourself, and they'll come for sure. And some of them will be unexpected for sure. But it's an important thing to realize that every time a door opens, it is an opportunity. You may not want it, but it is an opportunity. So my first observation would be, in these moments of dynamic change, opportunity abounds. And that's important to recognize and realize and embrace. The other thing that I think is true is that we are working hard to listen to our friends in industry and make changes for our curriculum that support our students to be ready a year or two from then to enter the profession. So I think that the key is that change was an operative word in your question, and change is an operative word in the world. It's just going to happen. And we have to help smooth the path, and our students have to be responsive to the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the advice that I give to young professionals or whatever is say yes. And just take, a lot of careers are not straight lines, and they go like this. And sometimes those hardest, and maybe they're not rewarding at the time, but you learn the most from those opportunities that are challenging. And you have already experienced that, I am sure. But we have some questions that were submitted, but I think we have another trivia question that ties into this. So I thought we should ask that question. We currently have 52,434 living alumni. Can you guess how many work in Connecticut? So, alumni.
You've challenged our listeners to answer two questions, and hopefully they've actually written a number down on a piece of paper in front of them.
That's right. Should I repeat them quickly?
You can repeat them quickly, and then we'll actually give them the answer.
Some of you might be multitasking or having lunch, so I'm going to give you a chance again. In 1992, we had 110 female graduates. How many do you think we had in 2022? And we currently have 52,434 living alumni. Can you guess how many work in Connecticut? But anyway.
Okay.
So,
we'll come back to that in one more question.
Right. So this was a submitted question. We touched on it. I think more than touched on it. We really did deal with it. But I think, what steps are you taking, and I think it's a collective you, to ensure that our alumni connection is stronger? So that's not just giving back to the school. It's the connection among alumni. I felt that UConn didn't have many resources for me to connect with alumni when I graduated. LinkedIn and Facebook groups are not well maintained enough. So as dean, I think you can answer some of that. As an alumni, I can answer some. And as a potentially new alum, I think you could give some feedback on what you would like to see. So,
shall I start?
Yes, go ahead.
So this is one of those questions that's difficult. We don't know if the person asking the question graduated a year ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, or 50 years ago. And of course, the status at that time was a function of when that was. What I can say to you today is that we are very active in creating a virtual presence for the School of Business that uses all of the social media actively and aggressively. We are in the process of realigning our marketing and communication vehicles so that we rely less on billboards on 84 and more on search engine optimization in the social media space, and manage those and occupy those in meaningful ways. Fair enough. Whenever it came from, I'm sure it's true. Are we doing more? Yes. Should we be doing more? Yes, we will.
Right. It is really rewarding to be in a room with other alumni. I went to an event in Atlanta. My husband has an office in Atlanta, and we had alumni from that area, and there was a speaker, and I think my husband's firm had hosted the group. It was a really rainy, torrential rain night, so it was a little difficult. And some people were stuck in traffic on the highway. Atlanta traffic's really, really tough. But anyway, but the connection with each other is it's really amazing when you travel and you bump into somebody, you see somebody wearing a UConn something and you connect with them and you talk, or, whether you're in another city, it's really powerful. So, and I know that there are more of those things going on. I know the foundation and the Alumni Association being together now, hopefully will provide increased synergy. It was right before COVID that they joined. So I think, things stopped and started a little bit. So hopefully that will continue to build. But I love meeting other UConn alum wherever I am. What was your experience? Where did you live? Who did you have for a professor? And do you still talk to your freshman roommate? And all of those things. And then obviously those of us that are big sports fans, it can really be a fun thing, going to games and traveling, going to the Big East tournament, whatever we're doing. And it becomes, sometimes those things can become a tradition and you can do a group, whether it's a business group or another school reception beforehand or whatever. It's just really, really helpful. But part of it is not relying on necessarily the Alumni Association to do it, is to, try to connect with someone and start a grassroots, start things up. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you talked a little bit about the power that you feel, Sherry, and that power doesn't just stop at the alumni. I think it continues. And as a student, I feel that power. And in fact, it was interesting. My UConn journey began and is now ending with alumni. And I think that's so symbolic of how, with alumni involvement, students see from a firsthand perspective what it looks like to give back and to inspire others. And in having so many conversations that I've been able to have with alumni, I feel this sense of connection to UConn. I think beyond I could feel, just sitting in my classes or connecting with my peers, it has shown me that, okay, this is not just the bubble I've been in for the past 3.5 years. It actually continues beyond that. So I think alumni involvement is so important. And I think seeing alumni engage with students actually inspires students to do the same. And it really is just a trickle-down chain effect.
That's right. And I think we have 250,000 living alumni. I think
that's a university number, not a business
university number. Right. So there are a lot of alum out there and growing every day, hopefully. So people living longer. So anyway, but it is again a challenge and a commitment that I think we all need to make.
Well, as to your question on the alumni side, you mentioned that there are 52,000 living alumni that we currently have, and I think that's a business school number.
That's a business school number, yes.
And the answer that we've gleaned here about alums working in Connecticut is 6,237, which is a smaller number than I expected. And in speculating about this, I thought two things helped explain it. We know that when students graduate from the business school, if they came from a Connecticut high school, about over 70% of them start their work professional career in Connecticut. So my bet is that one issue here is this is about living alumni and not about working alumni. So that 52,000 is living alumni.
Right.
My bet is a few are retired.
Yes.
Because I know that they live in Florida now, and I go see them periodically and all that. But the other reality is that people do move and flow. And we have a large population in New York City and a large population in Boston. So I want to refine those numbers for the next time we do this.
Yeah, no, good
But
point.
as long as we were talking about our questions, the other question we had to do with the number of graduates. And in 1992, we indicated there were 110 graduates. And that was female graduates that year, right? So it wasn't out there in the pool, but rather female graduates that year. And the data we have show that there are 447 who graduated in 2022. So a factor of 4. Nice. Noticeably larger. And 447 looks like approximately half of the graduating class.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
what percentage of graduating? Because we don't have the total number.
So good and exactly what I would expect, because we're about 50-50. So what's next?
And on that note of alumni, will there be any international trips available for UConn alumni to go connect more, feel the power from each other more?
That's a really
great question.
Good question. And what I can say is that we've got a strong tradition of international trips for various groups of students that have been transformative for the students. People who've never had a passport, people who've never traveled abroad, people who went and did and came back literally eyes wide open about what the world offered and how business practice differed, right? So we've done this a lot, but there was a little pandemic that sort of slowed us down for a couple of years. And that is something we're only now recovering from. So we're not back yet to where we were. But 3 quick examples. In the normal course of events, the Business Connection learning community is a place where, call it half of our incoming freshman students live in Belden Hall. Many of them choose to take an international trip with each other at extra cost and come back eyes wide open, really excited about it. We're doing that. And it's an example where our alumni have looked at this and said, this is terrific, and invested in making the opportunity more affordable for our students. So we have philanthropic contributions on the order of $100,000 to help defray the cost of this. Our EMBA program has an international trip. Our part-time MBA program has an international trip. We have a program with Germany where students learn German here and then go to Germany and study more German there and then do a semester as an intern in Germany. We're developing a program like that in Spanish. So are we committed to this? Yes. Are we going to do more? Yes. Are we just catching up after the pandemic? Yes. All very important. The other thing you should know is that we are part of Universitas 21, which is a group of prominent global business schools, universities, who collaborate on activities, and we're one of the players. And so we send faculty, we do joint projects, we bring students here to participate in programs. So we very much value and believe in an international presence for our students and for UConn.
That's great to hear. And whenever the opportunity arises, you let Sherry and I know, and we'll be the first to sign up to that trip.
Yeah, I think alumni traveling abroad and having those learning opportunities together is something that we need to do more of. There's no question. And I know that Coach Oriyama has done that to Italy with, growing up there, coming here at, I think he was 9 when he came to the United States. So having that, real strong connection.
So I just have to say, since you brought up Gino, my first experience with Gino, I took the job and I said to the provost at the time, my wife and I are going to go to see the Olympics in England. And so I need to go. And he said, well, you can't go. You don't have any vacation. And I said, I'll start later.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't start. So I went to England. And of course, Gino was there with the women because he coached the women that year, as he did so many years. And so it was my first meeting with Gino,
That's very
Wow.
and they did very well.
Yeah, that's very cool. But I'm thinking, Radenka, with her international experience, that would probably maybe be for very generous donors, maybe, to go and have that
Absolutely.
opportunity
Yep.
to learn. But we have so many professors that are international and have that, so that would be very cool. We were talking about this before, and I don't know if you want to touch on it before we close, because we are getting to that hour time frame. But there was a question that said, what are the experiential on-campus organizations? What is UConn doing to place students in more attractive fields upon graduation? So experiential on-campus organizations, there's so many. So I don't know, from a business perspective, there's some. Global, from the whole university, there's so many. But to get to the second point, what is UConn doing to place students in more attractive fields upon graduation? As a trustee, we take the many of the input from business, but also the input from our staff to say, our professors to try to make graduate degrees, certificate programs, things like that fit into the needs of businesses. So is that attractive? I hope so, because we want people to be employable and have jobs. So I hope that that is something that we do. But we're not an employment center, but I think one of the rules for alumni is to continue to network, to support incoming UConn students, and always to be receptive, and to keep the connections, your strong connection with businesses around the Northeast, not just in Connecticut, but
No, absolutely.
but I don't know. If you
So I think you've pulled out the interesting word in that sort of question, which is, what are we doing to place students? Well, we don't place students. We create opportunities for students to grow and mature and network and engage and find their path. And we find ways to bring our alumni to the campus and to them as mentors, as interviewers, as recruiters. And so I think our biggest objective is to help students think about their career management opportunity. And it starts when you're a freshman.
Right.
It starts when you're a freshman. And increasingly, and this is something a lot of people don't know, Sherry, the industry is looking earlier and earlier at talent discovery. We've got recruiters who come here and start talking to the freshmen and sophomores about what they might do as juniors and seniors. And it's moved earlier and earlier. And I remember very vividly, our real estate program takes students to New York, takes students to Boston, takes students to Hartford. And there are events that put the students in touch with our alumni and their companies. And so I was there in September, mid-September, with a bunch of our alumni. And I watched this young man go around the room and just network to beat the band. He was shaking every hand. He was introducing himself. And I inquired as to who he was, and he was a freshman. He had been on campus for a month. He had figured out where the real estate team was, where the bus was, how to get to New York, and he was already doing it. And increasingly, that's what happens. The accounting firms come the first week of school. I think all four of the major public accounting firms are here for a picnic with their recent hires, shaking hands and making connections. So when I say we don't place people, we don't. We open doors for people to engage with the professional community, and we welcome our alumni as the other half of that partnership. So I'm excited about it. I think it's going very, very well, actually. So.
And we need accountants, because I just read a piece about there is a shortage of accountants.
Well,
So
you know why? The firms spent about 2 years not giving salary increases.
Right.
And they sort of fell off the path of respectable options.
And
they just spent the last year raising those salaries. They're back competitive again.
That's good to hear.
So we may be near the end of our time. Is there a final question, Ish, that you'd like to put forward that should wrap us up?
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about this already, and I just want to emphasize how important of a commitment, the School of Business has to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'd love to kind of end on that note of what the efforts from the school are that are forthcoming.
Well, I think that there are lots of ways to answer that. One is we've talked about gender diversity, clearly very important. We've talked about regional campuses and ethnic diversity, very important. We at the school have invested in enlarging our diversity footprint. We have more professionals in the school working actively today to support a diverse community. And the students are taking action, excuse me, as well. So last year, the group of sort of graduating seniors stepped forward and said, we want to create an organization that interfaces with the administration more actively. And we said, great. And so that organization now exists and we're interacting more actively. So we care, we want it, and think it should matter. I think that if you look at first generation college, Pell eligible students, for the university, those numbers are increasing. For the business school, those numbers are increasing. We're delighted that that is true. And it certainly brings a lot of talent to the school and a lot of rich opportunity to engage among our students. And so keep your eyes peeled. I think we're making progress there.
Absolutely.
And I think we're at that point of saying thank you to those who are on this call. We're grateful for your time. I'm very grateful to Sherry and to Ish for their time with me today. It wouldn't have been nearly as interesting without their prodding and their occasional, really? kind of conversations. So thank you so much for your time. Any final thoughts?
No, thank you. Stay engaged and have a wonderful holiday season.